Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Cash Flow Positive. I'm your host, Kenny Bedwell, and this is a part two episode. So, part one is going to be me teaching a particular concept, principle for 15 minutes. Part two, this is where I bring someone on or just share a story, provide that color and that explanation behind the things that I taught. And for this first part two episode that I've ever done, I've thought that it would be amazing to hear from someone that I worked with, helped find a property recently, Katy, and she's got a really cool story. She's on with us now, Katy. Like I told you before, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and kind of tell everyone like your background, and just let's share your story, and we'll go from there. Okay, so go ahead.
I'm an art teacher. I have a local art studio in my town where I teach classes after school. During COVID, obviously, my studio had to get shut down. And I told my husband, I said, we need a backup plan because I'm not going to be able to do this consistently if something shuts down again. So I said, let's get into real estate. And he was like, really? And I said, yeah, I can still be with my kids. So we bought a duplex during COVID, and we have a long-term rental. Turned out to be a really great situation. I manage it myself, and the kids help out as well. And then I kind of went to him 2 years ago and said, let's do a vacation rental. Let's do an Airbnb. Let's diversify a little bit. He looked at me again like I was crazy, but I'm kind of the idea man and he's the numbers guy. So I knew I had to do something to learn the numbers because it's
Mm,
not my love language, as you can say. I started looking for properties in a beach market like 2 years ago, tried to pull the trigger and just didn't have the confidence to do it. And I just needed a little push, a little nudge. And so, yeah, this is where we're at. I just bought my first property today, signed the paperwork, and it's mine officially as of 2 hours ago. So pretty
that's
exciting.
congratulations. That's awesome.
Thanks.
And
Yeah.
also too for our listeners, you can watch this. Will be posted on our YouTube channel at SCR Insights, and I encourage you to do so because Katy, I'm assuming you're in your art studio right now, right? With your background.
Yeah. Yeah. All the lovely art that we do is right behind me. This is my quiet place where I don't get interrupted. So I come out
There you
here so
go. Awesome. That's good to hear. Okay, so let's talk about the property, the process. So the previous episode, I talked about cash on cash versus cash flow and how we determine that. So you just closed on a property, $410,000, right?
Yep,
As
that's
a
it.
purchase price. Okay. All right. So tell us, understanding your goals. So when we sat down and first talked about your goals, we said, and I'm going to just pull out some numbers here. So you were looking for something around, about a 20% cash on cash return, that cash flowed about $17,000. And so obviously getting your money back quickly, it was really important. Why was that
Yeah.
important to you though?
Well, this is a huge chunk of savings that my husband and I have been saving for 20 years. And I just, first of all, I wanted it to be a sound investment, and I wanted to prove to him that it was a good one. so,
Yeah.
so I mean, and just having my money come back to me a little quicker was important because my long-term rental is great, but that's I call it the slow burn. It's just going to take a while. So I kind of wanted something a little faster.
Right. Right.
So that was important for sure.
Right. So getting your money back quickly. I remember we sat down, we kind of, the 20% is about 5 years. You can kind of grow. I'm sure you'll get something else well before then. But so that's kind of where we started. So when you were searching on your own, not finding anything, not having confidence with the numbers. So how did like sitting down and actually kind of narrowing this stuff down, did that help you at all? Like, do you feel like that helped you at all, at least guide you or help you find properties or anything?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I I had never been to a whole lot of cities in Florida where we bought, so I felt like I had to go physically visit each one of
Mhm.
these just to get a layout of the area, but not necessarily. It was the numbers and the data meant more than actually physically going there, I guess. We had been under contract in a house in an area, and then I pulled out because we actually visited that town while we were in contract and I didn't like it at all. And so I just I just didn't know how to do the research and really find what we were looking for based on the Airbnb data and the short-term rental data. So just sitting down, especially with you, and just like going, hey, listen, this is what we're looking for. This is what you need to focus in on. This is what you narrow down. These are your numbers you need to look for. Huge. That was so huge. I would have never been able to do that on my own. I didn't know what I was looking for. So yeah, I just think just finding this property and having you help me kind of narrow down what I needed to look for was just, it made all the difference. I don't think I could have done that on my own. And I know I couldn't have.
So your husband is the numbers guy. Did he appreciate that? Was he like, oh wow, like this is, was that helpful for him to kind of see too?
Big time, big time. Because he has to see it on paper. It has to make sense to him. And if it doesn't, oh boy, it doesn't work out. So he really let me take the reins a little bit more than normal on this. He kind of stepped back a little more than I thought he was going to. I think he just trusted that you and I were working together and it was going to work out. So that made a huge difference too. Yeah. I mean, I could not have done it without you, Kenny. You're my guy.
Yeah. No, don't have to praise me on this, but I appreciate that. I really do. I really do. I really appreciate that. So when we were looking, I remember, we were kind of looking all across Florida, a lot of beach markets. I mean, that's ultimately where we're at. So you found a property in Bradenton. Tell us more about that journey. So we sat down, we said, here are the initial numbers. Here's my cash on cash goal, which then we figured out the cash flow goal. Okay. We got the numbers down. We figured out personal preferences, which was let's go find in Florida. Then we're looking in markets. So tell us the journey to Bradenton. How did that happen? And why was that potentially a good fit for you?
Well, personal preference was probably, I know it's number 3 on the list, but it was kind of number 1 big time for me because I definitely wanted a beach market, had to be Gulf side. I wanted it to be Southwest Florida, and definitely the numbers helped too. But I really, really wanted a pool. I really wanted to be close to a beach. And so that helps you narrow in a little bit on the markets and where you want to go. So I just mapped Florida on the Gulf Coast, and that's all I would look at. And that really helped because that's my personal preference. So when the numbers worked out, that helped. It made me a little bit more confident on where I was picking. So,
right. Yeah. I love that you said that. So, I think that for anyone listening to this, obviously numbers are really important and we need to know our ROI goals, but understanding, just like Katy, like your personal preferences. I wanted to be on the beach. I wanted it to be, Gulf side, have a pool, like all these things. That makes it so much easier to identify the right markets, right? So we had this list of markets that you were going through. And I remember, we were kind of all over the place in that search process. And then you kind of narrowed it in Bradenton. But what do you remember? I'm kind of putting you a little bit on the spot here as we, kind of bring up the journey. But what stood out to you about Bradenton, about the properties there, ones that were doing well, ones that were kind of, so like, yeah, what stood out to you about the market?
Well, it was definitely funky. I know I love a funky, colorful little town. I live really close to Yellow Springs, and that's kind of my jam. If you know Yellow Springs, Ohio, Bradenton was funky. It had a lot of color. It allowed for a lot of freedom with how you decorate your houses. It had just this vibe that was just beach town, but colorful, and a lot of cool restaurants and breweries, and which those all matter big time to me. So it was so different than the cities that I was looking at before, where they were more like retirement communities. I didn't want retirement community. I kind of wanted this funky place. And so when I finally got to go there, I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. It's so funky. It's so cool. And that's my style. That's my vibe. So that's what kept me in that area. And it seemed like it was just a town that allowed for a lot of rentals and a lot of vacation spots because it's so close to Anna Maria and Bradenton Beach. And so, yeah, it just spoke to me on the funk level, I guess.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So we've got this property under contract, or you closed on it, excuse me. So congrats again. It's the pool property, $410,000. We can take a look at some of the numbers, but as I'm kind of pulling that up, tell me, what are your plans for this thing? So how are we going to get that cash flow number? So I found the pro forma. It's crazy because we set goals. So, people listening to this, like she has
Mhm,
$87,000 to invest. Okay. 87,000.
mhm.
And we set these initial goals. We set budget 410. We actually got a property for 410, 20% cash on cash return, which comes out to about $17,000. And we ran the pro forma on this property. And guess what? The cash flow number is in the middle case scenario, it's $17,000 so $17,173. So it's kind of like our subconscious is kind of keeping us in check a little bit too. Like you
Yeah.
wrote these things down. And sure, we can look at the other sheets and go, oh, well, $17,000. This is hit $17,000. But the reality is, like, we look at this stuff on a range, we evaluate on a range. And the middle case happened to be dead on exactly what that cash flow goal was. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you feel like that kind of helped you look at this property and go, I feel good about this?
Oh, big time. I mean, I felt good about it the whole time. And I don't know if that was something, just subconscious or just meant to be, but I didn't have too many freak out moments like I've had in the past where I'm like, I got to pull out, I can't do this. Just the numbers brought me comfort, which that has never happened. I am 41 years old. That has never happened. So numbers do not bring me comfort. They are
Right.
stressful. So for me to be comfortable at running those numbers and seeing what could potentially happen, I was just thrilled, and I never freaked out, not once. So that's a big
Yeah.
deal.
I was looking, what did it take you? Like, how long did it take you? It was only like 22 days to find this thing, right?
Yeah, it was very, very quick. I think you had said something to me on a call prior, and you said, "Oh, we're going to start shopping next week." And I was like, "What? Are you crazy? We just started talking. I thought you were
Yeah.
nuts." And it happened exactly how you told me. You were like, "Week 3, we're going to find something." And that's exactly when it happened. So
Yeah.
it worked perfectly. I don't know.
Right. I do want to say, like, if anybody listening to this ends up working with me, like, I don't want to promise a 3 week thing. Or some people
No.
it's like a week, but the circumstance, the environment, your headspace, like when you're really willing to work, like you put in the work, you put in the effort that you do. I tell people, you do what I say, we're gonna get results. Number
Exactly.
two, it was very clear and precise. I see a lot of people, two reasons why people can't find deals. Number one, they're not looking in the right markets. Okay. Number two, I guess three reasons. Number two, they're not looking in enough markets. And then number three, they're not looking at enough properties, deal flow. So, like, to evaluate. So, like, one of those three reasons is usually why people can't find something. And so, like, you were like, look, here's what I'm struggling with, but here's what I want. What do I do? How do I piece this together? And it's just like just a couple little tweaks. And then all of a sudden, boom, results. And it's that simple, when we have someone who can like really look at it. So, but I mean, just impressive, like your story and how you found
Thank
something and like
you.
just overcoming that fear of numbers. I remember at the beginning, I was like, all right, let's see how this goes. Like,
Yeah.
I had faith in you
Yeah.
though. But
I am the
awesome.
stereotypical artist. Numbers aren't my thing, but I also came into your process just saying to myself, I'm really going to keep an open mind here. And
Mm,
if this leads me in a different direction because I was so fixed on the beach market, and I thought, if this leads me in a different direction, then I'm going to follow that direction. And so I really tried to keep an open mind about your process and how to go. And I was willing to just go where the numbers led me. So I think that was a big deal. And then I happened to be in a beach market, but I was willing to go to the mountains. So that was a big deal to keep an open mind, I felt like too. So
I think it's important that people understand that, like, you dove into it. You
mhm.
jumped in 2 feet. There was no like, oh, let me tiptoe into this process. Let me try to like slowly figure this stuff out and then go. And I think that helps. Also, you weren't just like, oh, I abandoned ship and the beach markets aren't going to work. I'm just going to go start looking at mountain markets. You're like,
Yeah.
I got my markets, I got my goals. Now I'm going to start searching. So,
Yeah.
and I think that's really, really, really important. And then you learn those markets. That was another thing
Yeah.
too. Like, a lot of people, they think they have a market in mind, but then they're just looking for like some unicorn to reveal itself, out of nothing. And you're like,
Yes.
it doesn't work like that. They're not super obvious. I've got your property. Unfortunately, we're at that weird phase where we don't have an Airbnb listing ready. yet because you just closed on it. And then the Zillow, it's just like a picture of a house. I will. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. So this is the house, right? And frankly, there's no other pictures of it on Zillow. So we're kind of like stuck with this.
Yeah.
But like for people watching this on YouTube, this doesn't look like a winner face value. Okay, $410,000. I think is a 3-bed, 2-bath. Okay, sure, we don't have any context from the numbers, but you look at this property and you're like, there's no curb appeal. So what are you gonna do? How is this gonna be a win?
Man, I have so many plans. So my dad and I are going to live down there for a couple of weeks together. I'm a painter and he's a great painter. So we are going to put so much color in this thing. In my studio, I've been working on custom art pieces for the house for every room, putting in lots of murals. I mean, it's just going to be color, color, color. I named it the Happy Hacienda. So I've got some fun signage. Yeah. Just color all day, every day. The backyard's going to be pretty spectacular, a little bit of a game room. And yeah, it's just going to be like family friendly fun, just like something that I would want to take my kids and go and do and stay. And it's just going to be just the Happy Hacienda. So we'll see. Lots of color.
Okay, so lots of color. I think I want to touch on this too. Like, so when we were doing our market research, do you remember the different properties we found in this area?
Oh, yes.
So what was that secret recipe that kind of caught your eye? Do you remember that?
Oh, big time. The murals in the backyard. It was all about outdoor living space. And it makes sense because you're in an area where it's beautiful all the time. So people want to be outside. So that's where I'm going to spend the most money, is that outdoor living space.
And to kind of highlight this, going back to this property itself, this front outside, was that shown in a lot of properties?
No, not really. I mean, no. And it definitely needs some curb appeal. I mean, just, the pictures are great, but when you see it in person, it definitely needs something to grab your attention, some curb appeal.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting when we were looking, the properties you were just mentioning with like the art and murals and stuff, they were older homes, right? You remember that? Some of them were like, they were updated from the interior and everything like this one, but they were older on the outside. But it's what they did with the experience, the backyard experience, like you said, you're going to highlight. And I wish we had a shot of the backyard. We could show it, the yard and all the stuff that you can do with it in the fence. Just, but unfortunately we don't. So everyone listening, just imagine, it looks cool in the backyard, or it will look cool in the backyard. But it's kind of a blank canvas with an updated interior. You kind of have a really cool project on your hands. You're going to find out how much your father loves you. He's a good guy.
He's a good guy.
But you really get to know someone when you're getting an Airbnb ready. So for everyone who has an Airbnb, they're like, yeah, it sucks. So,
I know. I said we're either going to emerge from this best friends or we're never going to speak again. There's going to be one way or the other. My parents are getting so excited about it that they've asked John, my realtor, to find them a property now too. So they're like all ready to do the same thing. I don't know, but so they might, they might do it too. So we'll see. Stay tuned.
Make sure you help with the numbers.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Okay. Well, first off, congratulations again. This sounds like an awesome project and incredible endeavor you're on here.
Thanks.
So I'm sure you guys are super excited. But for you in the future, assuming this is incredibly successful, which it will be, obviously for your next one, what are you going to do? I want to hear your thoughts. Like, what are you going to do for finding your next one?
I'm probably going to call you.
Well, I'm not fishing for that answer. I should have thought the better question. I'm not fishing for that.
No. I'm looking maybe to diversify areas and just look in a different area. Maybe some of those areas that popped up on my search that the data was really good, but it wasn't what I was looking for the first time. Like maybe revisit those areas that, I could have something in the mountains where there's snow, I don't know. So that's what I've thought about that a little bit. We'll see. I'd like to have 5 properties total. That's my goal. Long-term and short-term, maybe a little variety. So we'll see.
So let's sit on that for a second. So 5 total properties. Why 5?
I think that's manageable for me. I just think that's a good goal to have just to see if I could manage all 5 of those, because I do a lot for my long-term rental in the town where I live. I mow all the grass, I do all the landscaping, I kind of do all the repairs. And sometimes that could be a lot. Most of the time it's not, but sometimes that could be a lot. And I think if I had 4 more houses to worry about, I might be a little stressed out, and having 2 teenagers. So that goal 5 has always been my goal. I don't know. It might just stop at 2 or 3. Who knows? We'll see.
Well, as long as they're making money and cash flowing,
Yeah.
that is all that matters, right?
Yes, exactly. Maybe I'll hire a manager. That would be great too.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Katy, anything else you kind of want to close us out about this experience, finding the, not necessarily me, but just finding in general, like how that process went for you, any lessons you kind of learned, any advice you give to anybody who's kind of struggling to find something for the first time?
If you're struggling, let the numbers talk. I mean, if you're confident and you've run the pro forma and now you can't account for every little detail. Like, my insurance was a little higher than I thought it was going to be because Florida is pretty crazy right now. And some of the pool maintenance is a little, like, some things are going to be a little higher than what you think. But if you in that pro forma, that gives you so much confidence, and just seeing what the data is in that area. I mean, it can just, the numbers could bring you confidence, and that did that for me. And that is something that I never thought I would say, but once you see the numbers and your ROI works out and all your numbers work out, that gives you the confidence to proceed. Believe me, I've freaked out a couple of times, not nearly as much on this process, but the other ones. And you have this moment of like, what am I doing? I'm ruining my life. But you'll get clarity once you see that data. It's huge, huge.
Awesome. I'll add to that too. I think something, even while we were going through the process, we were constantly updating the pro forma. I see a lot of people sit down and they'll like fill out a pro forma. So people are listening who don't know what a pro forma is. It's just that sheet that tells you the ROI based on expenses, any sort of debt service, like your mortgage, monthly payment, and then obviously the expected revenue. Tells you what the ROI, return on investment, is going to be. And so the biggest thing that people mess up on those expenses, right? We kind of underestimate sometimes. You don't realize, oh, wow, this gets, like you said, insurance, some of these things. And so it's important that we don't just fill it out one time, but we update it every single time that we get something new to really help us stay on track. So anyway, I know we had to do that a couple of times. And first we're like, oh, wow, this looks like, like a $30,000. And then it goes, okay, here's reality 17. And you're like, okay, it still works. But, so.
Especially if you're buying in a market where you don't live. And it's like, I've never had a pool before. I've never had, the taxes are really high where I am buying a house, but not where I live. So like those little things that you don't think of when you're in a different market can scare you a little bit, but just trust the numbers. It just makes a world of difference. So yeah. And just do it. I mean, don't be scared. Just do it. You only live once, right? Like that's what I keep telling myself. I only live once. Just shut up and do it. Stop being a baby.
Yeah. Well, I think you got somewhere cool that you can go visit too. Because frankly,
exactly. That's my goal.
So that's awesome. And that's, once again, congratulations, Katy. I think you're gonna do well.
Thanks.
As always too, please reach out, even if you, even if you're like, hey, what do you think of this? Like, please, reach out and don't be a stranger and everything. But I appreciate you hopping on here and doing this podcast and sharing your story. I know there will be people who were hesitant to purchase their first short-term rental and hear this, that you'll help them and give them that confidence. So anyway, so thank you so much, Katy. Any last remarks or anything?
Thank you to Lloyd at the mortgage shop and John, my realtor McNaught at short term shop. He was great. Lucas and you, and even just the Facebook groups that I follow with Bill and Brea Faith. I mean, it's all of that matters. Just follow as many people as you can because all of it matters. So yeah, just thanks to everybody. It's a good day today.
Yeah, it's big. It's big. Cool, Katy. Well, I look forward to the future conversation with you. Thank you so much for being on here. Thanks everybody for listening. I hope you enjoyed this part two segment. And if you did, please, 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 it would mean the world to me if you get, especially with this podcast just starting up, please leave a review in either Spotify or Apple for me, and share it with somebody who needs to hear this story. There's a lot of people out there who want to get started and just don't know what to do. So share these episodes, make this go out so that we can help people find cash flowing properties. I'm your host, Kenny, and I will see you on the next episode.